There's a moment quiet, almost invisible, when you realize that the person you've been trying to please is terrified of you. Not because you shouted, not because you fought back, but because you finally saw them. You saw through their mask, through the charm, through the tears that were never real. You saw the emptiness they hide behind control. And in that instant, something shifts. If you've ever loved someone who made you question your worth, you'll know this feeling. The confusion that comes after every argument. The guilt that doesn't belong to you. The way you keep replaying what you said, wondering if you were too much or not enough. This story is for you. For the ones who have loved a narcissist or someone who fed on your softness. For the ones who are still untangling their hearts from manipulation disguised as love. Because when Carl Jung said, "The meeting with oneself is at first the meeting with one's own shadow," he wasn't talking about some abstract philosophy. He was talking about this moment, the one where you stop chasing approval and start meeting the parts of yourself you abandoned just to be loved. In this video, we're going to walk together through what happens when the mirror turns. When the empath, the giver, the healer, finally becomes what the narcissist fears most, someone who no longer needs their validation. It's not a story of revenge, it's a story of awakening. We'll go deep into that transformation, the mirror effect, and what it means when your healing exposes the truth that your pain once tried to hide. If this message finds you at the right time, maybe it's because you're ready to stop shrinking. Maybe it's time to stand in your reflection and see what the narcissist never wanted you to see, your power. So, before we begin, take a breath. Let this be a space where you're safe to feel, to remember, to reclaim. If these words already touch something inside you, if you've ever felt unseen, silenced, or small, then this space is for you. Stay with me. Let's uncover this together. And if you find resonance here, I'd love for you to join this growing circle of hearts, learning to see themselves again. Subscribe, not because you have to, but because maybe you deserve to keep hearing words that remind you you are not the broken one. There's a strange kind of silence that follows the end of a relationship with a narcissist. It's not peace, it's emptiness, like standing in a room where all the echoes of your own voice have vanished. You look around and realize that so much of what you thought was really just a reflection of what they needed. At first, you miss the chaos, the messages, the emotional highs and lows, the constant pull between being adored and being blamed. You don't even realize that the exhaustion you feel is not withdrawal from love, it's the aftershock of emotional warfare. Narcissists feed on reflection. They need someone to mirror their ideal image back to them, someone who sees them as special, superior, untouchable. And you became that mirror. You gave them what they couldn't. Give themselves admiration, empathy, forgiveness. You saw potential where there was manipulation, softness where there was control. But the moment you stop playing that role, the mirror begins to crack. It starts with confusion. They accuse you of being selfish, cold, distant. You start to question yourself. Have I changed? Am I the problem? But what's really happening is this: you're no longer reflecting what they want to see. You've started to see the truth. And truth terrifies them, because truth is the one thing their image can't survive. That's when they start to unravel. Suddenly, you become their enemy, the person who betrayed them by choosing peace over drama, clarity over confusion. You become the one thing a narcissist fears most, someone who cannot be controlled through guilt. You begin to heal, but healing is not a straight line. It's messy, tender, full of contradictions. One day, you'll feel powerful. The next, you'll miss them. That's okay. You were conditioned to find safety in chaos. You mistook intensity for intimacy. Carl Jung once spoke about the shadow, the parts of ourselves we suppress. The narcissist is an expert at projecting their shadow onto others, making you carry their shame while they wear your empathy. But when you begin to reclaim your shadow, your anger, your boundaries, your voice, you stop being their supply. You stop being their mirror. And that's when the mirror effect begins. They look at you and no longer see the reflection they need. Instead, they see themselves the emptiness, the lack of empathy, the fear of being ordinary. You've become the embodiment of what they run from, truth. But here's what's truly powerful. This isn't about defeating them. It's about seeing yourself again. It's about looking in the mirror and realizing you are not the reflection of someone else's wounds. You are the mirror of your own awakening. And awakening scares them, because for the first time, you're not reacting, you're observing, you're not explaining, you're walking away, you're not chasing love, you're becoming love. The narcissist senses this shift even before you do. They try to pull you back in with guilt, nostalgia, or charm. They might promise change, cry, even play the victim. But once you've seen the pattern, it never feels the same again. The spell breaks. The illusion fades. What they don't understand is that the moment you saw their manipulation for what it was, something irreversible happened. You stopped needing their approval to feel worthy. You stopped dancing for crumbs. And that's the mirror effect in motion when your healing becomes the reflection of everything they can't face within themselves. There's something haunting about the moment you begin to see patterns that were once invisible. It feels like waking from a long dream, one that was both beautiful and suffocating. You start noticing how you used to soften your voice so they wouldn't feel threatened, how you downplay your achievements so they wouldn't withdraw affection. You see how you twisted yourself into shapes that fit their comfort, not your truth. But healing doesn't start with anger. It starts with recognition, the kind that makes you pause and whisper to yourself, I did not deserve that. You remember the charm that first drew you in, the way they made you feel seen, almost chosen. They mirrored your kindness back at you until you believed you'd finally found someone who understood your soul. That was the hook. But the reflection wasn't love. It was strategy. They studied you like a mirror, learning which version of themselves you'd adore, and they played it perfectly until the mask slipped. When it did, you felt disoriented. Their words turned sharp, their warmth went cold, and you found yourself apologizing for things you didn't even do. You stayed, thinking you could bring back the version of them that once made you feel alive. But that version never truly existed. It was built from your reflection. And when you finally stop feeding the illusion, they panic, because without your attention, their sense of self begins to crumble. They lash out, distort your image, twist the story, and paint themselves the victim. They need to believe it's your fault. It keeps them from confronting their own emptiness. But here's the quiet truth. You don't need to prove your innocence to someone committed to misunderstanding you. This is where Carl Jung's insight begins to unfold in real life, not as a theory, but as a mirror of the soul. Jung believed that what we reject in ourselves, we project onto others. Narcissists live entirely in that projection, terrified of their own inadequacy. You became their scapegoat, the vessel carrying their disowned pain. But now, you're beginning to return that projection. You're saying, this isn't mine. That's where the transformation deepens. The moment you stop absorbing their story and start writing your own, you become their mirror in a new way, not one that flatters, but one that reflects truth. They can't stand it. Your calm presence becomes unbearable to them. Your silence, once mistaken for submission, now echoes with power. They try to provoke you because chaos is the only language they understand, but you no longer respond. You've outgrown the game. And as you rise, something profound happens inside you. You start feeling the weight of your empathy shift from being a weapon used against you to a gift you finally own. You realize empathy was never the problem. It was the absence of boundaries that left you unprotected. Now, your empathy becomes wisdom. You begin to understand that love without self-respect isn't love, it's erasure. You remember that your softness is not weakness, it's sacred. You learn that you can be kind without being controlled, compassionate without being consumed. And in that revelation, the narcissist loses all power over you, because the one thing they can't manipulate is someone who knows who they are. That's when you become their worst fear, not because you hurt them, but because you no longer mirror their illusion. You've become whole, and wholeness cannot be controlled. There comes a moment in your healing when everything starts to slow down. You're no longer driven by the need to explain or to make them see your side. You stop rehearsing imaginary conversations in your head. You stop checking if they've noticed your absence. Because finally, your energy turns inward. At first, that quiet feels strange. It almost feels wrong, like you've forgotten something. But what you've really forgotten is the constant tension that used to live in your body, the hyper-awareness, the fear of saying the wrong thing, the need to anticipate every emotional storm before it arrived. Now, there's stillness, and in that stillness, truth begins to rise. You start remembering moments that once made no sense when they looked at you not with love, but with calculation. When your tears were met with a smirk, when your joy seemed to irritate them, you realize that every time you felt small, it wasn't because you were small, it was because they needed you to believe that you were. This is what Jung meant when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." You thought their behavior was your fault. You thought their silence was punishment, but now you see it was all about control. And when you see it, something miraculous happens. The shame begins to dissolve. You no longer feel the need to carry their darkness as your own. You stop identifying with the pain they caused, and instead, you start seeing it as proof of your capacity to love deeply, even when that love wasn't returned. But don't rush this part. Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering who you were before you were taught to question your worth. It's about forgiving yourself for staying, not because you were weak, but because you hoped. You see, the empath's greatest wound is not that they loved too much. It's that they loved without being loved back in the same language. But that same heart, when healed, becomes unshakable. The mirror effect now takes on a different light. When the narcissist sees you thriving without them, when they realize their absence no longer haunts you, that's when the reflection turns brutal. They are forced to confront the truth they've run from all their lives, that they were never the source of your light, they were only standing close enough to take credit for its warmth. And when that realization dawns, they retreat. They may hover, they may test the waters, they may send breadcrumbs to see if you'll bite, but you won't. Because you've learned that peace is not something you beg for, it's something you protect. That's the turning point, when you no longer see their cruelty as mystery, but as immaturity. When you look at their manipulation and feel not hatred, but distance. When their name no longer brings a storm, but silence. And in that silence, you hear your own heartbeat again. The same heart they tried to convince you was too sensitive, too emotional, too much. That heart now beats with quiet strength. You begin to understand that you were never broken, you were bending in places. Love was never meant to bend. And when you finally stand tall in your truth, you don't just survive the narcissist, you outgrow the entire pattern that led you to them. There's a day, usually an ordinary one, when you realize you haven't thought about them in weeks. You're driving, or folding laundry, or sitting by a window with your morning coffee, and it hits you. The silence no longer feels heavy. It feels free. That's when you know the mirror effect is complete. Because now, when you look into your reflection, you no longer see the broken version of yourself they left behind. You see clarity. You see resilience. You see the person you've been trying to find through every heartbreak, every apology, every sleepless night. You've met your shadow, and it didn't destroy you, it revealed you. You see, what Carl Jung tried to tell us wasn't just about psychology, it was about soul. He knew that healing isn't about fighting your demons, it's about inviting them into the light. You did that. You faced what you were afraid to see, your anger, your loneliness, your desire to be chosen. And in doing so, you became something a narcissist cannot comprehend whole. They may never understand the quiet power of that, but they'll feel it. Because when you no longer serve as their reflection, they are left only with themselves. And that's the one thing they've always feared. Meanwhile, you're learning to live differently. You laugh without checking if someone disapproves. You cry without shame. You speak without shrinking. You begin to attract people who don't need to take from you to feel enough. People who meet you where you are, not where they can use you. That's when you realize your healing was never just for you. It was for everyone who will meet you next. Because your energy has changed. You no longer mistake intensity for connection or pity for love. You no longer confuse manipulation with passion. You've become your own mirror now, and the reflection is beautiful. So take a moment to breathe that in. Feel it. The peace that once felt impossible. The stillness that no longer scares you. The knowing that you can love again, this time without losing yourself. And if these words found you in the middle of your own healing, maybe it's not by accident. Maybe this is your reminder that you are not too much, not too soft, not too late. You are becoming everything you were meant to be before the world tried to make you smaller. If this message spoke to your heart, let it stay with you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe, not because you should, but because this space will always be here for the part of you that's still learning to rise. Your story doesn't end in pain. It begins with truth. And the truth is, you were never the narcissist's victim. You were always their mirror.